I decided to write the book after many people, after my giving a speech, said I should write a book. They basically said you need to tell the story. And once several people told me that, I finally understood that the story could be inspirational to people, and therefore it should be told. And it's taken me 2 years of long, hard hours over the weekends, because I have a full-time job, to tell it, but I think hopefully it'll have that impact.
Was this with your work with Junior Achievement that people told you should write a book, or was it just, you know, speech making throughout your job?
It's speech making in general. I think, interestingly enough, a gentleman that I work with at Accenture, Walt Schill, recently took me to the Darden School. And he thought the story was worth telling because he worked with me in several projects back a few years ago. But he never knew the story. Once he learned of the story, he says, you've got to tell the story. And we actually just did that at the University of Virginia. Got some very good feedback. And Walt posted in his Accenture blog what happened at the University of Virginia. Last night I got an alert that somebody in Oslo, Norway, somehow heard about Obstacles Welcome, went to the Amazon website, read the excerpts, and said that the U.S. is still the land of opportunity. Comparing it to the European community, which I thought was amazing that somebody in Oslo could somehow have gotten word of the book and had actually looked it up. I think that it's definitely a story worth telling, but once people understand it, I think it's a universal story. It's a story about how immigrants, can succeed in this great country of ours.
Sure.
And that's our history, that's our heritage, right? So people can relate to it no matter what walk of life they're in.
Yeah, I think that's true. What was your writing process like? How did you talk into a tape recorder and type it up, or did you map out chapters first, or did you start with the climax? How did you do it?
I actually started in a chronological way so that I could remember the facts. I started documenting and writing it in chronological fashion, and then I worked with Paul Brown, who helped me write it from the New York Times, and also Lee Agnew, people who helped me to bring the stories to life. And then we decided to do it not in chronological order because it would have been I think too bland, but try to make every chapter stand on its own for the most part, and then infuse it with the most interesting part of the topic we're going to speak to in a particular chapter. So the editor, the book editor at Thomas Nelson, rearranged the book in its current form, and I think she actually made it a better book. I was being too logical and sequential, but it really helped me to remember the facts, and then after we had the facts, we could move some stuff around to make it more interesting for the reader, and so the reader didn't have to necessarily follow in chronological order to get the most out of the book.
I noticed that you talked about your experience of coming here from Havana, and you got to age 14, and then you were a CEO at AT&T Wireless, and then we kind of worked backwards a bit. But so I thought, this has had some major editing here.
It had, and I think that I wouldn't have written it that way, but when you think through it, we actually changed the concept from I'm writing a story about me to I'm writing a book that will help others. And so we put it in the context of not what would be what would make the most sense to me, but what would help the reader the most. And so we focused on let's make it easy for the reader to get the salient points as opposed to having to read step by step to get the salient points at the end.